The Dresden Files. I actually downloaded this game not too long ago, but it was during the initial COVID lockdown, so I didn't actually get a chance to play it. And I keep meaning to re-download it. The thing is that the reason why I have so many games on my Steam library, but a lot of them aren't installed, is because my hard drive died on me. So I've got all my games basically on a hard drive that I can't access right now. And I've been looking into getting it repaired. The problem is as most of you know, it is not cheap recovering a hard drive, especially after it's been damaged. So it's going to be a while before I can get my hard drive back up and running. So in essence, it's going to be a while before I can even get any of my stuff working again. So that's that. Unfortunately, this little camera I've got for myself is not that great. Of course, this is my first stream, so I am going very cheap. So you'll just have to bear with me. I mean, obviously, my games are in a better quality than my actual video. But the microphone's finally working the way I want it to, or at least, as a headset microphone would work. This is basically a earbud microphone combo that I got when I got my last Samsung phone. So it's a couple years old. But it works generally well, so I'm going to keep using it until I get something better. So, anyway, the whole thing with the Dresden Files is the reason why I downloaded the game is I am a huge fan of the book series. I was not a fan of the TV series because the TV series took some great liberties with the original work. Like, first of all, I'm sorry, no self respecting wizard walks around with a hockey stick as a staff. I'm sorry. That's just corny. But if any of you are Dresden Files fans and ever want to get into the series, the book series is fantastic. It starts with Stormfront, Jim Butcher, and its most recent one was the combo two book that was very episodic. It basically started with Peace Talks and then ended with Battleground, whereas Peace Talks was basically, it was originally planned, according to Jim Butcher, the author, he was planning on doing it as one big book, Peace Talks. But because the book became so massive, he realized he needed to split it into two books. So there was Peace Talks that was the beginning, and Battleground was the end, where literally Battleground is nothing but a gigantic battle. It is an amazing book. It's probably, in my opinion, one of Jim Butcher's best because there is not a moment of that book where you just get a moment of those like you don't even get a chance to breathe. I mean, it's just nonstop of that book. It's so good. And me personally, because I'm a Chicago resident, like I've lived in the Chicagoland area my entire life, the references he has are spot on. Like he actually did his research on his first few books. He had never actually been to Chicago, so all of his what he was saying about Chicago was completely inaccurate. Like he had mistaken Wrigley Field's parking lot for the Sox Park parking lot. The Sox Park parking lot is massive by comparison. The Wrigley Field was just minuscule by comparison. So that was actually one of the funny things about the series to start from. But my wife got me turned on to the series. I think it was just before Changes, the book came out, and that's when I got involved in reading it. And I read it the whole series straight through, and I loved it. And the reason I could say that is because I was not a huge fan of the Harry Potter books. I was actually a little bored with them, so I never really got into them. So I ended up stopping my reading of the Harry Potter books. I think with Goblet of Fire. Yeah, I think Goblet of Fire was the last one I read. Yeah, Goblet of Fire was the last one I read. And I was honestly disappointed in the series. I didn't like the way it was going. I couldn't get emotionally connected to the characters. Not in the same way I did with like Lord of the Rings and the Dresden Files. And I should specify that my primary reading through most of my youth was Star Wars books because I still am a huge Star Wars fan. which was the thing that hooked me about the Dresden Files books, is it's obviously written by a Star Wars fan because almost every book, every single book, has a Star Wars reference. Like either he quotes a line or mentions the movies or something like that. So right off the bat, the book series is amazing. So the Dresden Files books just hooked me from the start, and I have to thank my wife for it because if it wasn't for my wife, I never would have gotten into the series. She was my girlfriend at the time. She turned me onto the books. Now she is my wife, and because of her, I have been enjoying this stuff ever since. So it's a great book series. If you are a fan of fantasy and fantasy reality kind of stuff, it's great. And the thing is that it's similar to that of Harry Potter, as in Harry Potter was kind of set in modern day, but not really. Whereas the Dresden Files is definitely set in modern day. There's no way you can confuse that because the guy, it references to Chicago, modern cars, cell phones, guns, all that kind of stuff. Everything is modern day, and that's the interesting thing is it's modern day technology and wizards that can't use technology. So it's the contradiction in turns is that wizards have this immense power and this ability, but they can't use the simple things like Harry Dresden. He is an absolute huge video game fan, and because he grew up in the essence of the series, he grew up in the '90s, so he got to play video games in arcades and stuff like that before his powers really manifested. Whereas when he's older, he can't even touch a console or an old box arcade game because the thing would fry as soon as he touched it. But he loves video games. He loves, role playing. He loves movies. He loves TV, even though he can't watch it. I mean, you feel for this character because, and this is the interesting thing about Harry Dresden is that Harry Dresden was written as the Fool, 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 and it's a writing technique that you either write the kind of hero you have. There's either the noble hero or the anti-hero, or there's more into it, and unfortunately, I don't remember exactly what it was. And Jim Butcher goes into detail into one of his books. Unfortunately, I can't recall it right now. But the essence is that Harry Dresden is a fool. He's smart. He is very book smart, and he's very intelligent about magic and its techniques and stuff like that. But in real life, he's an idiot. In the best analysis of that is that he's an idiot when it has to do with women. So that's just the way it is right now with the series. Is that he has the whole series is he has multiple up and down relationships and stuff like that. So yeah, it's so good. I honestly really love reading and now listening to the series because I've read all the books. I've caught up on all the books, and the really cool part is that um, Jim Butcher decided to uh, not only do novels, but he started branching out into graphic novels. So the first there's technically the first book in the novel part of the series is Stormfront, but the very first chronological story is starts in Welcome to the Jungle, which takes place just before Stormfront. And it's really well drawn. The story's not it's not massive, but it's a good story that leads you into it. So it's a nice way for you to get a visual of what the Dresden Files looks like, and that way, from that point on, you have an image to go with in your head, like what Harry looks like, what it's like when he uses his powers. And the best part is the next two graphic novels were done of Stormfront and Full Moon, which are the two books that are the start of the novel series. So if you're not into books, you can read these two and you get the idea of the story. And it's really drawn well, written well, it's really well done. And then there's multiple graphic novels that take place that basically chronologically go along with the Dresden Files. So it's really cool because you read the books and then you read the graphic novels, and there's so much in the Dresden File universe. I mean, it's almost the equivalent of the Star Wars universe. Is that there's so many characters, so much about the technology and magic and all that kind of stuff that it all coincides. It's so cool. I highly recommend it. If you want to play this cooperative card game that I have up on the screen right now, it's actually kind of fun. I think this particular one covers the first few books, so you get Stormfront, Full Moon, Grave Peril. I don't think it goes to Deadbeat or Summer Night, but I think there are bonus packs if I remember right. Let me actually take a look right here. Okay, it does. It does include a lot of these books. So you get Stormfront, Grave Peril, Blood Rights. There's side jobs there. I don't see Deadbeat. That honestly would be the one that I would highly recommend. So in the Dresden Files storyline, it's Stormfront, then Full Moon, which a lot of fans are not a fan of. I liked it primarily because it deals with werewolves, and I am a huge werewolf fan. I mean, I have a costume for werewolves, so that's my whole thing. And I love werewolves. I think they're really cool. So Grave Peril is the book that really changes the series around because you basically Stormfront, Full Moon are the ones that get you into the series. Grave Peril is where the series takes a complete turn, where you finally get to see it really start into the main story. And the very next book after Grave Peril is called Summer Night, where you see Harry finally get to actually kick ass. It's really cool. Like each of the books, he kicks a little ass, but he also gets his ass kicked in the process. But Summer Night is where he actually gets to really put it to the bad guys. You finally feel like, ooh, this guy is cool. And then the following story is Blood Rights, which has, in my opinion, one of the funniest starts to a book you will ever find. Now, let me put it this way. This is the first line of the book. The building was on fire and it wasn't my fault. I mean, already, just by that line, just think about that line. The building was on fire, it wasn't my fault. Holy crap, he starts out this whole situation where the guy is in a burning building. And the next few lines, you realize he's carrying. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's too good. There's so much that happens in that book. It's so good. I don't want to spoil it for you. Oh my god, it's so good because it's so funny. Oh my god, I think Blood Rights is one of the funniest books in the whole series because there's so much going on that you just like, oh my god, you're just laughing as you're reading the book. You are literally laughing. It is so good. Oh, I want to give you my favorite line from the book, but I don't want to spoil it. But at the same time, I'm actually working because I saw these on YouTube, the kinetic typography, and I absolutely love the way people do this. And I've already started working on a kinetic typography of my favorite lines from Blood Rights, where it's this conversation between Harry and Thomas Wraith, who is a White Court vampire. Now, just to give you a little touch of the Dresden Files, there are vampires, there are werewolves, there are monsters, there's ogres, there's goblins, there's witches, there's warlocks, there's pixies and brownies, and there's pretty much everything. Unicorns, um, chimeras, centaurs. I mean, everything that's in fantasy that you've seen from either Harry Potter or Dungeons and Dragons or stuff like that. It shows up in the Dresden Files. So if you are a fan of any of those, you will get a beautiful combination of that in the Dresden Files. So I highly recommend the series. It is so good, and I'm gonna keep saying this because it's so good because it really is. It's an amazing series. I mean, just look at this picture right here that I'm looking at right now. That I've got my cursor on. It's a flaming hallway, and that's Harry right there. I'm not going to tell you where that's actually from, but just look at that. I mean, would you ever think that Harry Potter would be in that situation? No, he'd be running for his life in the other way. Harry's the one who goes into the building when that's going on. That's why Harry Dresden is and will forever be a badass by comparison to Harry Potter. So it's just, oh man, I love this series and I love listening to it because that's the great thing about this series is that it started out with one of the best actors they could have chosen to do the voiceover, and it's James Marsters. Now, for all of you who are nerds out there, I know you know who James Marsters is because you've probably been fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But he is a fantastic actor. I've been a fan of his ever since I heard him do this series, and he does every single book. There was only one book he didn't do, but then he recorded it up for the fans because everybody was grossing it. So James Marsters does every single book in the Dresden Files series, and he's even done some, and he's done the short stories too. He hasn't done the graphic novels yet. Of course, I don't know if they're ever going to animate the graphic novels. I wish they would. I honestly wish they would because I'd love to watch the animation of the comics. If you've ever seen Action Comics and stuff like that, where they actually animate the comics and they have the bubbles pop up and it feels like you're actually watching an animated cartoon, it's really cool. And I wish they would do that with all the Dresden Files graphics. I don't know if they're going to because I don't think Jim has ever pushed for it, but I would love to see it done. And I think some fans started doing it. I haven't been able to find it again. I think I saw it once, and I think it was on somebody's Facebook page or something, but I haven't seen it since. I don't know if it was a copyright thing and they stopped the guys from doing it. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's honestly the series is so good, and I've read every single book. I've read all the graphic novels, and I just love going back and re-listening to the books. I bought them all on Audible, and I listen to them in the car or something like that when I'm driving to work. Because here's my procedure when I read these books. I get the book, I read the book, then I read the book with the audiobook, then I listen to the audiobook. So I literally I read the book twice, and then I listen to the book from then on because I basically the book reading the book I have to read the book. But I always get I used to get the actual books themselves. But then it became an inconvenience because I felt bad when I bought the book and then I damaged it because I can't help it. I used to carry my books with me when I go to work and stuff like that. So I'd sit at work and I'd open the book and I'd break the seam and all that. And I felt bad doing that, because I'm a quintessential comic book fan, so I've read comics and I collect them. I put them in the bags. I make sure they're nice and safe and stuff like that. And I always hated when I ruined a comic. And I feel the same way about books because they're paper, so you don't want to ruin the book. But you end up doing it because you end up going back and rereading your favorites, and you end up ruining the book in the process. So I always felt bad about doing this. So that's why I started going digital. So, and I bought all the books on digital, and I love reading them again and listening to the book while I'm reading them. But I just love listening to the book while I'm driving because then the way James Marsters reads those books, he gives you just enough emotional connection to be able to see it in your head. And it's so epic. I love it. I love getting to listen to it. It's amazing. So I highly recommend to anybody if you're interested in this series. It is so worth listening to and playing and listening to it. It's just amazing. Reading the books, obviously, you want to do that first. I mean, that's just what you want to do. But getting to actually read the books is and the graphic novels, it's amazing. So I highly recommend getting into it, especially if you're a Star Wars fan or any kind of fantasy fan. You'll love it. Okay. Well, I spent enough time talking to you guys, so I'm going to call it a night. And I see that nobody's online, so I'm literally talking to myself, which is fine with me. This is my first time. So, uh, good nights, good luck, and we'll talk to you guys next time.